Hey, I'm Raj Grobes with Believe in Chelsea FC, and I've got my favorite soccer personality about to join us here. It's Tommy Smyth. You can find him on Summer Soccer with Rodney Marsh on Sirius XM channel 157. Tommy, how are you?
I'm fine, Raj. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Yes, yes. You know, you're my favorite soccer personality. I've loved talking to you in the past on Sirius XM about the World Cup and whatnot. But now we got to talk some Blues, Tommy. That's right, Chelsea Blues. And new manager Enzo Maresca says, I am 100% sure we are on the right path. Tommy, are you 100% sure Enzo Maresca and Chelsea are on the right path?
Well, Raj, last year, all during the season, myself and Rodney Marsh, we had a question every day. Have Chelsea turned the corner? Now we got to the last couple of weeks, and yes, they were starting to get around the corner. They could see around the corner. Do I think this man is 100% right? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chelsea fans. At the beginning, I thought it was going to go very good. But I don't think what they're doing is conducive to going well in a Premier League. I mean,
Mm,
let's face it, they sold their best player today. Well, maybe he's not sold, but he's gone. Conor
yeah,
Gallagher. I mean,
yeah.
how do you let Conor Gallagher go? If you're a soccer aficionado and knows what this man does, he was their best player last year. Pochettino said, okay, I'm going to make Gallagher, I'm going to make him my captain. And the next thing is the report was, oh, we're selling him. How the hell do you sell your captain?
Yeah, yeah. Sell your captain, and he's an academy boy, Tommy. Trevor Chalobah's an academy boy. They're leaving him at home. I don't understand why Chelsea treat their own like this. It's baffling to me, Tommy.
Yeah, it is because I mean, obviously, what somebody whispered in their ear was, "Hey, if we get a lot of good young players, we'll be all right." But you and I know that good young players are good some days, they're bad
Mm,
some days. They are inconsistent. And I'm not going to make the statement that somebody made to Alex Ferguson because it didn't work out. Alex Ferguson was told you'll never win anything with young players.
mm,
It's not a case of you'll never win anything with young players, but it's a completely different dynamic when you're dealing with young players. Like I read today that they're buying some young guy from Brazil. He's 16 years old, and they expect him to play in midfield. I mean, somebody must be having daydreams or something.
mm. Well, we do love our teenage Brazilian and South Americans, Tommy. And when you're talking about these young players, it's called this word on the street is we have this Project 2030, Tommy, where we're signing all these teenagers and we'll be good by 2030. So I guess I'm hearing you're not buying in the 2030, that philosophy.
No, I remember the last philosophy of buying into the number was the US when they maintained they were going to win the World Cup by 2010. Remember that thing was round all the time. Oh yeah, by 2010 we'll be all right. You
Yeah.
can't look at these games and say by a certain amount of time you're going to be okay. I mean, these games, unfortunately, teams have injuries, players go off, players don't want to play anymore. There's a whole
Mhm.
lot of things go off. Soccer is a game. You make it today. If you don't make it today, you may not make it tomorrow. You may not have the same players. I mean, as you said, it's not just the loan, right? What Chelsea are bringing in, it's what they're offloading. The players they're getting rid of. I mean, they're getting rid of
Mm.
seasoned players who has played very well for them. And at the end of the season last year, one would have to say that Chelsea were doing as well as any team in the Premier League and doing much better than most. I mean, at one time during the season, I mean, they were in a position down, they were closer to 10th than they were to the top of the table, but yet and all they had a great finish. And based on that, I kept saying to myself, well, if they keep this City team together or this Chelsea team together, I was taken aback there by their loss to to City last night,
Yeah.
4-2. I mean, they're not doing the right thing, in my opinion. I mean, okay, the manager's a good manager, but there's another problem here that a lot of people won't recognize. I mean, the way the manager plays football when he played it with Leicester, it's not the way Chelsea play. He is
No.
going to play a completely different game. So to get that different game going, you got to be using your pre-season to do it. Does he have time? What had the 5 games in 5 different cities? I mean, is it a tour of the world they're on, or is it a case of getting themselves ready to play in the Premier League? There's a lot of big questions here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And of course, you're listening to Tommy Smith. You can hear him on Summer Soccer with Rodney Marsh on Sirius XM channel 157. Tommy, Did you think, in your opinion, did Poch do enough to stay?
Oh yeah, yeah. I definitely felt that he was turning the corner. Well, if he
Mhm.
hadn't turned the corner, he was well halfway around it. And I mean,
Yeah.
he was starting to be understood by the players he had with him. He was starting to understand the players that he had with him. I didn't like what he was doing early in the season. It just every time you heard him interviewed, you didn't think he had any enthusiasm for the team, or it was just a case. Oh yeah, managing Chelsea and things are going all right. I mean, Chelsea have spent over $1 million, and this is
Mhm.
what you have. Over $1 million.
Yeah.
What are you in the business for? Just to spend
Yeah.
money? Do you have that
Yeah.
much money? You just want to spend it and you don't care how it's going to go?
Yeah, yeah, I hear that. And speaking of spending money, it seems like they're spending money on a new manager every season. Tommy, what does that do to a club when you're seems like Chelsea changing managers every single season? How far of a does it set them back? Does it delay progress? What does that do with the club when you have no stability?
Oh yeah, it delays progress. I mean, what are the five managers in the last maybe 6 years or something like that? I might be a little bit off there, but every time you go to play for a new manager, it's one dynamic. So then you're playing for that new manager, and all of a sudden, oh, he's going. Then you have to start adapting to the new philosophy that the next manager has. And if you look at the managers that they've had, they weren't really managers, right? Who would say they all practice from the same hymn sheet. They didn't. They were all very individual stylists that they had different ways of going about things, starting with the great one, Jose Mourinho. I mean, completely different. They were completely different. And this upsets the team. I'm sorry, but it's continuity is needed, not just amongst players, but you have to have a bit of continuity with managers as well. If the team doesn't understand what they're playing for or how they're supposed to play, the game nowadays has changed. I mean, when I was playing, Rodney was playing, okay, put the ball there in the midfield, clear on somebody, or somebody run onto it. Now, the technical stuff that's involved in it, you look at some of these backroom teams, there's 25 people in the backroom team. I mean, there's
Oof.
four guys telling you how you should pass the ball. I mean, that's how intense it has become. And, you see all this stuff of, oh, we have to play out of the back, and oh, we have to be a counter-attacking team, and we have to, there's so many different things. And if you don't get them, I mean, there's Chelsea had a lot of good players last year. Chelsea had some very, very good players last year, but they
Yeah.
never got the work out of them. And if you're going to be playing young players this year with some of the older players, yeah, you'll get a bit of joy out of them, but you're not going to win anything.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And speaking of managers, you mentioned Marino. Should Chelsea have gone after a manager like Marino, or maybe Thomas Tuchel, bring a big name back? Or did you feel they did the right thing by taking a manager like Maresca?
Well, if you could get, I wasn't a great believer of Thomas Tuchel, what he did.
Hmm.
I didn't, I was hoping they weren't going to go after him. I mean, there has to be a manager that, okay, if you're saying it's a 5 year deal that they're going to win the championship in 5 years, and that's the way they brought the manager in. I mean, that's a fairy tale. Somebody sat them down and somebody whispered in their ear, "This is how you do it," because it's
Hmm.
not going to happen that way. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen. I mean, one of the things you have to satisfy when you have a soccer team, you have to satisfy the guy that's putting down his hard-earned money at the gate. I mean, these guys go to work. The price of tickets now. I mean,
Oof.
if you're taking yourself and your kid to the game, you've almost blown a week's wages,
Of
and you're going
course.
to you're going to go to see some guy experimenting with the team. Give me a break. You don't need experimenting. If you want experimenting, buy a lab. Go into the lab and experiment all you want on. You can't experiment on the football field nowadays. There's too much money involved, and there's too much prestige involved. And the fans nowadays, they want it now. We want to win now. And you can probably get away this year. I'm probably being a little bit harsh here, but they can probably get away this year if they show, hey, this man has us on the right path. Let's give him until next year to see what will happen, which I thought they would do with Poch. I thought he had them on the right path, and I said, surely they're going to give him another year now. And if he does something in the next year, if he wins the FA Cup or wins the League Cup, something like that, they'll say, yeah, we're definitely on the right path. But the guy was gone. So now they have a new guy in, and you're going to have to judge, is he on the right path? To be on the right path with Chelsea, in my feeling about how big a club Chelsea are, you have to win something in the year. It's no good just playing. You have
Yeah.
to win something in the year. And like I don't think that a team like Chelsea, with the tradition they've had and with the players they've had over the years, should be playing in the Conference League. Is that what they're playing?
Oh, yeah, I can't even pronounce some of the teams in that league,
Yeah,
Tommy. I've never heard of them.
yeah.
Yeah, that's where we are. And we scrambled just to get six to finish that. I mean, barely made that. Tommy, speaking of experimenting, and what do you think in terms of striker? We know Chelsea's been searching for a number 9 for years. Should they stick with Nicholas Jackson, or there's rumors, word on the street is Victor Osimhen, maybe a loan with an option to buy? What would you do there at the number 9 for Chelsea? Stick with what you have or go shopping?
Yeah, I would go shopping. I would go
Mm.
shopping. I mean, from what I've been reading this morning, and it's kind of all over the English newspapers, Ozyman said he doesn't want to go to Chelsea. He doesn't
Oh,
want. He doesn't want to play in London. He didn't necessarily rule Chelsea out, but now again, we'll see how that'll work out because he would be the man to need. I mean, he is a guy who knows how to score goals, and he doesn't want to play with Napoli anymore. And obviously, he's going someplace. Now, if Chelsea let somebody else in the Premier League take him away from them, hey, that's big trouble in double for Chelsea because they didn't get him and somebody else did get him. So you're going to have to take care of him when you play them. I mean, maybe he's just using that as a little bit of pressure to get a little bit more money because there is a lot of money. The one thing that everybody knows now is that Chelsea have money and Chelsea will spend the money. Whether they'll spend it wisely or not, that's anybody's guess, but they will spend the money. There was always that saying when Ferguson was managing United and United were going well. There was always the feeling, and Ferguson would tell you himself, I interviewed him several times, he would say, well, when we go after a player, because he's wanted by Manchester United, there's already 10 million extra on his asking price. And that's the
mm.
same with Chelsea. I mean, the whole world knows now if you were selling a player, wouldn't you love to see Chelsea come calling? Are you kidding me? You would love it. And that's one of the problems that they have to be very careful of. But I don't think they're going to get Ozyman. I think maybe they're going to be forced to stay with who they have.
Yeah, well, that'll be Nicholas Jackson if we're forced to stay there, which he had a mixed bag last year, of course, not a natural number 9, usually a left winger. But speaking of spending, we did sign Dewsbury Hall. They did spend money there. Is he a reasonable replacement from what I've seen in preseason? It looks like he's playing the Gallagher role, the Conor Gallagher role. You said he's good as gone. We all know that. Do you see Dewsbury Hall as a possible replacement for that role?
Yeah, they may try to slot him into it, but I don't think he's going to be fit to fill the
Mm,
boots of Conor Gallagher. I mean, he had, like, when he was with Crystal Palace, when they took him back, I mean, he was after having a great year with Crystal Palace, too. And if you're playing well with Crystal Palace, no disrespect to Crystal Palace, but they're not the greatest team in the world. And if
no.
you're playing well with them and getting everybody to look at you, you know you're doing something right. And Chelsea must have done that because they took him back. But I'm amazed that they took him back and then they let him go again. I mean, they're letting go their old players. I mean, the players who hold it together. And I know there's so many things now with all this fair play. You have to have this, you have to have that. I mean, not everybody gets away with it like Man City. Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. That just slipped out. I'm sorry. Phew, I shouldn't be saying that.
We'll edit that out.
Yeah, they have only about 100 cases against them, so don't worry about it. I mean, but I can't see how they're letting him go. And no, I don't think you can replace him man for man.
Yeah, I hear you there. Now, speaking of that position, that's of course in the midfield. If Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo are both healthy, let's say we paid a lot of money for those guys, Tommy. If those guys played to their ability, would that salvage Chelsea's season or their outlook, in your opinion?
Yeah, it could very well. The first thing Enzo has to do is keep his mouth shut. That's the first
Yeah.
thing. You can't go around spouting things like he did and get into the trouble that he did because there's nothing worse than a fractured dressing room. If you get a dressing room that's fractured and the players don't want to talk to one another, it doesn't matter who the manager is. You could have 4 managers in there and they're not going to solve the problem. So hopefully, I understand that they had a meeting and
Mhm.
that it was all sorted out. But when I look at the Olympics and I see what happened after France's Argentina game the other night,
Yeah.
saying to myself, I wonder how much sorted out is this? I mean, it was really on the boil there. But yeah, they're 2 very talented players. They are 2 guys that will control midfield. The problem is, but what do you have next? Where do you go? I mean, when these 2 guys get the ball, they can't hold it forever. they have to give it to somebody. They got to go to the right. They got to go to the left. They got to go somewhere with the ball. And that's where the questions will be asked, I think, in terms of who the attacking line is going to be for Chelsea.
Yeah, I hear you there. And speaking of who you give the ball to, who plays next to them, Rees James. Now he's inverted a little bit. Maresca has played him inverting, but obviously Cucurella will probably invert his left side and put him in the midfield. A lot of games missed for Rees James. The last 4 years, he's missed 38 games, 25 games, and then 9 of the season before that, and then 20 games. Do you trust Rees James to stay healthy and stay in one piece on the pitch?
Well, if you're looking at it and you're judging by past tense, I don't think you can. I mean, you hate to say that about a player. The one thing you hate to see is a player being injured. And like when Rees James was going well, Chelsea were really going well. I mean, there was for a time there, he was dictating what Chelsea would do to teams. And I mean, there's no question about his ability. He is a brilliant, brilliant player. Unfortunately, he just gets injured so often. I mean, I do say that somebody like him was like, I don't know if you remember, there was an American player played with Ajax, and he had an Irish name. I forget his name now, but it was the same. He would be injured every 5 or 6 weeks, and he was a great player. And the injury takes you out of the game. And what happens, as you very know well, is that if you keep getting injured, and it keeps being the same part of your body that keeps getting injured, eventually it's going to break down and it's going to be beyond fixable. So I really would like Rees to stay in the game. And yes, he can control things. He will make a huge change for Chelsea. I mean, the players we've talked about so far, every player you've brought up is going to be a key player for Chelsea. The question is, how do you knit them together? Like if Rees James is not there, what do you do? What are you going to do then? You know, if you're missing him, if you have him for the whole year and you could depend on him for the whole year, you'd say, hey, we're in pretty good shape there. You're after mentioning 4 players that Chelsea could depend on.
Yeah, I hear you there. Of course, we're speaking to the great Tommy Smyth. You can hear him on Summer of Soccer, Sirius XM, channel 157. Couple questions left for you, Tommy. Do you trust Todd Bowley and the sporting directors to get Chelsea on the back to the glory days?
Is there lawyers listening? You know?
It's just you and I, Tommy.
Oh, just you. Okay, we won't let it go any further. No, I don't. I don't. And not. I mean, they have the money, they have the wherewithal. The problem is, I don't think, and this is lack of knowledge. And it's not that they're lack of knowledge. They're very smart men that have made an awful lot of money. It's just that they haven't been around football or soccer, as we call it. I mean, it's one thing to control a baseball team or a basketball team. It's something else when you start dealing with soccer teams. And if they would stay, if they would stay over here and say, here, there's the checkbook. Every time you want to check, here, let me get, and leave it to the guys who know how to run the football club, Chelsea could be in really good shape. Now, at what time do they say, hey, I'm not the guy that's running everything, I'm just the guy who's providing the money? Because you can tell it's egos that's at stake here. Egos. I mean, and that was one thing about Abramovich. And I know he had an ego. I mean, I know when I was doing with ESPN, I remember days when he would he'd arrive into the dressing room telling the managers who he'd like to play. And, you know, I always remember, I have a great little story I'll tell you about Shevchenko. I went to London to interview Shevchenko, you know, and he was after being in his heyday at AC Milan. And I said to him, getting him a wee bit wired up, I said, Andres, I said, the rumor is that the only reason you're playing for Chelsea is because you speak the same language as your boss, right? And he leaned back in the chair and he said to me, Tommy Smyth, that is the biggest bullshit ever. That's what and ESPN used it. It was a great interview. But that's what you were up against. But Abramovich, there was a difference. He knew when to back off. He knew when things weren't going well. And he knew when it was time to leave it to the manager and to the players. Now, I'm not sure that these guys know where that line is. You know, there's a line that if you own a team, you shouldn't really cross it. Maybe every once in a while you come in and you wish them Happy New Year. You say, okay, Happy New Season, or congratulate them when they won something. But you don't be in their ear all the time. If you do, that's problems.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. And that Chelsea fans definitely agree with you there, Tommy. Tommy Smith, where does Chelsea finish this season, in your opinion, in the table?
Yeah, well, early on when I was, we do this Giorgio mug every year with Sirius, and I was picking Chelsea. I figured they would be in the top four. I'm going to say I think they're going to have to really struggle to get into the top six, but they should
Mhm.
make the top six if things go right enough for them. If they can straighten out, if this man is getting enough of information, and I know he's short some players. I mean, if you look at last night, or was it last night, whenever it was,
The top.
against City,
Mhm.
4-2 against City, that's not a good result. I mean, to get hammered by Celtic, that's not a good result. I mean, I know they had a good result against Club America, wasn't it? Yeah, and
Yeah,
and I don't. I'm one of those guys. I don't pay an awful lot of attention to preseason stuff because it's the same as these friendly internationals. They don't lean much for you. But when you have a new manager coming in, it's a different story because he does have to get something out of these games. If you're managing Chelsea, if Pochettino was there, he wouldn't have to get anything out of the games. He could play the players he wanted. Let me have a look at that guy that I missed something he did last year. This new man is coming in and saying, now, I don't know that guy. Where should I play him? And he's going to be told where to play him. So there's a difference. I always say there's a complete difference in a pre-season with a seasoned manager and with a new manager coming in. And the new manager, I mean, he's been strapped all over the place. The amount of travel they're doing, unless they're training on the airplane, I'm not sure how they get that training. He probably has them running up and down the aisles or something. I don't know.
yeah,
But that's maybe the way Chelsea's training.
yeah. Well, watching them play out of the back, Tommy, is going to have me on heart meds if they're going to do this all season. It's a high wire act, I'm telling you. And final thing for you, Tommy Smith, who wins the Premier League this season, in your opinion? Do Man City do it again?
Yeah, it's very hard to look by them. It's very hard to look by Pep Guardiola. And I mean, okay, there is a few upheavals in his club. I mean, Kevin De Bruyne, who knows where he's going to go? Maybe he's not going to go anywhere. I mean, Jack Grealish, will Jack Grealish get back into the good books again, showing off his calves so that the ladies can all love him? Or will it be a case of, that Pep's going to put the hammer down and say, listen, guys, we're going to try to win it again? I mean, to win it as many times as they have has been unbelievable. To do it
Mhm.
one more year would be crazy. I think one of the teams this year that will be a lot stronger, and I'm going out on a limb here, I think Ten Hag will have a much stronger Manchester United team this year.
Okay.
I think that Aston Villa, with the amount of money they spent, are going to be a very, very strong force as well. Arsenal look great. They look great so far, but they've looked great as long as I know them. So, last year they had a chance. The year before they really blew it. I imagine this year, if they don't get something done, Arteta will be gone. So I'm saying that City will win it again, and it's kind of it's not a very solid pick, but I'm saying that it will, just based on what's happening around them, and Chelsea will fight to get into the top six.
And of course, you know the name, you know the voice, the great Tommy Smith. You can hear him summer soccer on Sirius XM, and also my favorite show, Grumpy Pundits, returning. When do you return, Tommy?
Yeah, I believe we're returning the Tuesday after the season starts, and we're on Tuesday and Thursday. Grumpy Pundits with Rodney Marsh and Tommy Smith. I mean, we're very grumpy when you wake us up in the morning. We are really.
Grumpy, but you tell it like it is. Good stuff. We'll make sure we listen, and I'll be plugging and talking to you down the line, Tommy.
Thank you very much. A pleasure.